Alex's heart pounded as he stumbled through the thick alien jungle. The crash had left him injured, and now, with no idea where he was, fear began to creep in. His ship, which was supposed to take him back home, lay in ruins somewhere behind him. There was nothing but the strange, glowing trees and the eerie silence of this unfamiliar world. The air was thick with the scent of wet soil, and the sounds of distant creatures echoed through the trees. Alex's head swam with exhaustion, and his vision blurred. He needed help, but who could he turn to on a planet full of unknown dangers? As he struggled to keep moving, Alex suddenly heard a faint rustling sound behind him. His senses sharpened. Was it an animal, a creature, or something else entirely? He spun around, gripping the makeshift weapon he had found earlier, ready to defend himself. The figure that emerged from the shadows was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall, with glowing skin and eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness, she stood before him. Her hair was long and shimmering, flowing like liquid silver in the dim light. She looked otherworldly, yet there was something strangely captivating about her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Alex's mind raced. Should he attack? Should he run? But something in her gaze held him in place. She wasn't making any aggressive moves. Instead, she simply watched him. Then, as if reading his mind, she spoke. "You saved me," she said, her voice calm and soothing. "Now let me serve you, human." Alex blinked in confusion. "Serve me? What are you talking about?" The alien girl stepped forward, her presence calm but strong. "You may not remember, but when your ship crashed, I was there. I owe you my life." Alex took a cautious step back. He had no recollection of saving her, and the situation was starting to feel more confusing by the second. He could barely understand what she was saying, let alone what she meant by serving him. But one thing was clear. He had just met someone, or something, that could change his entire fate. And so, their journey together began, filled with questions and mysteries that neither of them could yet understand. Alex's confusion only deepened as the alien girl, who introduced herself as Ziria, guided him deeper into the jungle. He was still on edge, unsure of her true intentions. She claimed he had saved her life, but he couldn't remember any such thing. All he could recall was the crash and the chaos that followed. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "What's your real reason for helping me?" Ziria turned her head slightly, her glowing eyes meeting his. She seemed calm, as if she had known Alex her entire life, even though they had just met. "We're going to a safe place," she replied softly. "There are things you need to understand, Alex. Things that I can't explain here." The air grew cooler as they walked, the glowing trees casting eerie shadows around them. Alex wasn't sure where they were heading, but the strange beauty of the alien world both fascinated and unnerved him. He had never expected to find himself in a place like this, and certainly not with someone like Ziria. Ziria stopped by a small clearing, where a hidden cave lay nestled against a cliff face. "This is where we'll rest for now," she said, pushing aside vines that revealed the entrance. "We'll be safe here." Alex hesitated before entering. There was something in the way Ziria spoke that gave him a strange feeling, like she knew more than she was telling. He had to admit, though, he was too tired and injured to keep wandering aimlessly. The promise of safety was tempting. Inside the cave, Ziria motioned for him to sit on a rock, while she quickly gathered supplies from the cave's depths. She moved gracefully, as though the place was familiar to her. It was clear that she had been here before, yet there was something distant in her expression, something Alex couldn't quite place. "Why do you keep saying I saved you?" Alex asked again, trying to make sense of everything. "I don't even remember you. I don't even remember much of what happened." Ziria paused, looking up at him. Her face softened, almost wistful. "It's complicated. When your ship crashed, you didn't just save me. You unknowingly became part of something far bigger. A bond formed between us, one that neither of us fully understands. But it's real. Alex frowned, his head spinning. A bond. Between him and an alien. I don't understand, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Ziria knelt in front of him, her voice lowering as if sharing a secret. You saved me from a fate worse than death. My people, my enemies, were hunting me. They wanted to use me as a weapon. I've been hiding, running for my life. And when I saw your ship, when I saw you, I knew something had changed. You were the key to my survival. Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Alex struggled to process what she was saying. How could he, an ordinary human soldier, be the key to saving her life? You're not just anyone, Ziria continued, her gaze intense. You are part of an ancient prophecy. A human will save my people, but only if they're willing to trust in their bond with us. You are the one, Alex, the one who will help us. Alex blinked in disbelief. A prophecy? What are you talking about? Ziria sighed, sitting down beside him. It's not just about me. The fate of my entire species is tied to you now. I may have been hiding from my people, but I'd never stop being part of the galaxy's struggles. There are forces at play that want to control everything, and they see you as an obstacle. The weight of her words sank into Alex's chest, but it didn't make sense. Why would he, someone from Earth, be caught up in an alien prophecy? He wasn't a hero, wasn't someone destined for greatness. He was just a soldier trying to survive. Why me? Alex whispered, his voice filled with doubt. Ziria's eyes softened with something like sadness. I don't know yet, but what I do know is that we're connected now, whether you want it or not. And soon, you'll have to choose a side in this war, because the forces after me are coming, and they will stop at nothing to destroy us. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed from the distance, followed by the unmistakable sound of engines. Alex's heart skipped a beat. They're here, Ziria muttered, her eyes widening in alarm. Alex's blood ran cold. Who were they? What did Ziria mean by they? He looked at her, panic creeping into his chest. What do we do now? He asked, his voice shaky. Ziria stood swiftly, pulling him up with her. We fight, and you will be tested, Alex. You'll see soon enough what kind of man you truly are. As the distant roar of engines grew louder, Alex realized that whatever had brought him here was far beyond a simple accident. His life, and perhaps the fate of an entire alien world, had just been thrust into his hands, and he was about to discover just how deep the rabbit hole went. The sound of engines grew louder as the two of them scrambled to gather their things. Ziria's movements were swift, precise, her alien grace on full display. Alex, on the other hand, felt a surge of panic and confusion coursing through him. The weight of her words, the revelation of the prophecy, it was too much to comprehend all at once. They're getting closer, Ziria said, her voice steady but urgent. We have to leave, now. Alex's heart raced. Who were these enemies she spoke of? Why was she so certain that they were after him now? The situation was spiraling out of control, and Alex had no idea how to handle it. His instincts told him to run, but where would they go? The alien world was vast, and the jungle outside was full of hidden dangers. I don't know what you mean by prophecy, Alex said, trying to catch his breath. But this is insane. I'm just a soldier, Ziria. I'm not a hero. Ziria turned to him with a serious expression, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the cave. You may not see it yet, Alex, but you're more than just a soldier. You're tied to something bigger than yourself. And the bond we share, our connection, is stronger than you think. Alex blinked in confusion. What kind of bond? I don't even know you. How could we possibly be connected? Ziria took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving his. When you saved me, something inside you changed. It's not just about the physical act of saving me. There's something deeper, an energy, a force, that connected our fates in that moment. It's the reason I found you when your ship crashed. It's the reason you're here now. Alex frowned. This was beyond anything he could understand. He was just a regular guy, a soldier who followed orders, a man with no knowledge of galactic prophecies or mystical bonds. He had seen his fair share of danger, but this was a whole new level. Before he could respond, Ziria grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the cave's exit. "We don't have time for this, Alex. We'll talk later. Right now, we need to survive." They emerged into the twilight, the alien sky above them shifting from purple to dark blue as night began to fall. The distant hum of the engines was growing louder, and the sound of approaching ships reverberated through the ground beneath them. Ziria's eyes darted toward the horizon, scanning the landscape for any signs of the approaching danger. "Who are they?" Alex asked, his voice strained. "And why are they after you?" Ziria didn't look at him as she began to lead them through the jungle. "They're from the Dominion, an oppressive empire that controls much of the galaxy. They'd been hunting me for years. I'm a target because of who I am, because of my royal bloodline." Alex tried to keep up, his legs heavy with fatigue. "So, what does this have to do with me?" Ziria glanced over her shoulder, her expression hardening. "The Dominion believes that anyone with the power to overthrow their rule is a threat. You, Alex, are the key to defeating them. I know it sounds impossible, but I've seen it in the stars." Alex's mind spun. How could a simple soldier like him be the key to something so huge? He had no special powers, no extraordinary abilities, just a man who had been caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. As they moved deeper into the jungle, Alex couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward Ziria. Her words were laced with urgency, and despite everything, Alex found himself trusting her. He didn't fully understand the connection between them, but somehow he knew she wasn't lying. "Why do you trust me?" Alex asked as they crouched behind a large rock, trying to hide from the approaching ships. "You don't even know me." Ziria crouched beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I have no choice, Alex. The prophecy binds us. My people's fate is tied to yours. I'm not just your protector. I'm part of this story, too." Alex's chest tightened as the realization hit him. Ziria wasn't just an alien girl who had stumbled into his life. She was the key to a prophecy, and somehow, whether he liked it or not, so was he. He wanted to argue. He wanted to question the reality of everything she was saying. But the distant rumble of the Dominion ships reminded him that they didn't have time for doubts. They had to move, and fast. "We need to keep moving," Ziria said, her voice cold and resolute. "The Dominion won't stop until they have both of us, and they'll use everything they have to make sure that happens." Alex nodded, his mind racing. He had no idea what was coming next, but one thing was clear: his life was no longer his own. And for better or worse, he was now bound to Ziria, and to whatever future awaited them both. As they made their way deeper into the unknown, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey, one that would change the course of the galaxy itself. The jungle was silent now, the sound of the approaching ships eerily distant, though Alex could still feel the tension in the air. Ziria moved swiftly, her eyes darting from tree to tree, her every step calculated as if she had walked this path many times before. Alex struggled to keep up, his body weary from the crash and the constant movement, but he pushed through, knowing that they couldn't afford to stop. The forest around them seemed to close in, the dense foliage growing thicker as they ventured deeper. Alex was used to surviving under pressure, but this situation felt entirely different. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was now fighting for a future he didn't fully understand. "You said the Dominion was after you," Alex said between breaths. "But what's so important about you? Why would they go to such lengths to hunt you down?" Ziria didn't answer immediately. She stopped for a moment, glancing at him over her shoulder with a pained expression. Her glowing eyes shimmered in the dim light, the soft glow of her skin the only thing that cut through the darkness of the jungle. "I told you," she said softly, "it's because of my bloodline." Alex's heart sank. What do you mean by that? Zuria's voice was barely a whisper, but there was a weight to her words that made them feel even more powerful. I am the last of my royal family. My people were once rulers of this sector of the galaxy until the Dominion came to power. They slaughtered my family, leaving me the only survivor. But there's more. My bloodline holds a key to a power that the Dominion wants to control. Alex furrowed his brow, trying to wrap his mind around her words. A key to what? What kind of power? Zuria's gaze softened, and she took a step closer to him. The power to bend the stars themselves. The power to control the fabric of the universe, to reshape entire worlds. My ancestors were the keepers of this power, and the Dominion wants it for themselves. They believe that by capturing me, they can unlock it. Alex swallowed hard. He had heard stories about powerful empires and secret weapons, but he never imagined that something so impossible could be real. So, the prophecy you mentioned, Alex said, his voice trembling slightly. It's about me somehow helping you stop them. Zuria nodded, her expression grave. Yes, the prophecy speaks of a human who will stand beside me and wield the power of my people, helping us overthrow the Dominion and restore balance to the galaxy. But that's where it becomes dangerous. Because the power doesn't come without a price. Alex's mind raced, trying to process everything. What do you mean by a price? Zuria took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. The power that the Dominion wants isn't just about control. It's about survival. And once you tap into it, you become a target for everyone, not just the Dominion. The entire galaxy will want what we hold. The price of using this power is the very thing that we've spent our lives running from: war, death, destruction. Alex could feel his heart rate spike at her words. The weight of the decision she was presenting him with began to sink in. How could he, a simple soldier, be part of something so huge? What was he supposed to do now? He had no choice but to keep moving forward with Zuria, but he could feel the storm of uncertainty building in his chest. We don't have a choice, Zuria said, sensing his hesitation. We can't let the Dominion win. If they get their hands on the power, there won't be anything left of this galaxy. They'll burn it all down, and nothing will survive. Alex's mind was spinning. He had always been trained to fight for a cause, to serve a mission. But this felt different. He wasn't fighting for a country, a cause, or even for his own survival anymore. He was caught in the middle of something far greater than anything he had ever experienced. And worse, Zuria's life, maybe the entire fate of the galaxy, was now tied to him. What happens if we fail? Alex asked, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. What if we can't stop the Dominion? Zuria stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression soft yet resolute. Then everything will fall. But we have to try, Alex. There is no other choice. A loud noise in the distance startled them both, snapping them back into reality. The hum of engines had returned, much closer this time. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He could see the glow of the Dominion ships in the sky now, their searchlights scanning the jungle below. They're here, Zuria said urgently. We need to move now. Alex didn't need any more convincing. He could hear the approaching ships, and he knew they were close. Zuria took his hand, pulling him toward a narrow path through the trees. Their time was running out. As they pushed through the thick underbrush, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled into a war that was far beyond his understanding. His life, his fate, and the fate of an entire species rested in his hands now. And somehow, deep down, he knew there was no turning back. Whatever happened next, he was already in too deep. And with that, the chase began. The jungle was alive with the sound of crashing footsteps and the hum of alien engines. Alex's heart raced as Zuria pulled him through the dense underbrush, her grip on his hand firm and unwavering. The Dominion ships were closing in, their searchlights cutting through the trees, illuminating the path just behind them. Every step Alex took seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying the urgency of their escape. "Keep moving, Alex," Ziria urged, her voice low but urgent. "Don't look back. We can't afford to stop." Alex's breath came in short gasps as he pushed his way through the foliage, trying to stay close to Ziria. His legs were burning, his body was sore, and every instinct screamed at him to stop and fight. But he knew that wasn't an option. Not now. Not when their lives, and so much more, were at stake. The sound of the Dominion ships grew louder as they neared. Alex could hear the voices of their commanders through the static of their comms, the cold, metallic tone of their orders. He could feel the eyes of their hunters, invisible but ever-present, scanning the jungle for any sign of movement. Ziria's pace never slowed. She moved like a shadow, her glowing skin barely visible against the dark backdrop of the jungle. Alex struggled to keep up, his mind racing. What was happening? Why was Ziria so sure the Dominion wanted her so badly? And what did she mean by the prophecy that involved him? His mind was spinning, but there was no time for answers. Not yet. All he could do was follow, trusting Ziria to guide him through the chaos. Suddenly, Ziria stopped in her tracks, causing Alex to nearly crash into her. She raised a hand, signaling for silence. Alex froze, his breath caught in his throat as he listened. The humming of the engines had stopped. "They're close," Ziria whispered, her eyes scanning the trees. "Too close." Alex's eyes widened as a flicker of movement caught his attention. Figures emerged from the shadows, soldiers in dark, armored suits, the Dominion's elite forces. There were at least 5 of them, their weapons raised, their eyes scanning the area with terrifying precision. They weren't just hunting Ziria, they were hunting both of them. Ziria's grip tightened around Alex's hand. "We can't fight them here. They'll overpower us. What do we do?" Alex asked, his voice strained. His mind was racing. He wasn't trained to fight in the wilderness, especially not against well-equipped soldiers. He felt like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. "We run," Ziria said with a grim determination, "and we use the terrain to our advantage." Before Alex could respond, Ziria yanked him off the path and into a narrow ravine hidden by thick vines. It was steep, and Alex stumbled, trying to keep his balance as they descended into the darkness below. The sound of the Dominion soldiers' footsteps echoed above them, growing fainter as they moved in the opposite direction. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might have escaped, but Ziria didn't slow down. She kept moving, pulling Alex deeper into the ravine, where the ground grew rocky and uneven. Alex's pulse was still racing, and the adrenaline pumping through his veins made his thoughts sharp. "Why does the Dominion want you so badly?" he asked again, his voice low. Ziria didn't answer immediately, her focus solely on their path. She knew that if they stopped for even a second, they would be caught. But as they continued to move deeper into the ravine, Ziria finally spoke. "Because I am the last of my kind. My bloodline holds the key to an ancient power. The Dominion wants to use me to unlock that power and gain control over the galaxy. But they don't understand what it truly means." Alex glanced over at her, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What is this power?" Ziria's eyes flickered with something like fear, though she quickly masked it with determination. "The power that my people once controlled, it is far more dangerous than they realize. If the Dominion unlocks it, they will not only control the galaxy, they will bend the very fabric of reality to their will." Alex swallowed hard. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined, a force capable of reshaping reality itself. No wonder the Dominion would go to any lengths to capture her. He stopped walking for a moment, his mind racing. "And what does that have to do with me? Why am I part of this?" Ziria turned to face him, her expression serious. "Because the prophecy says that only a human can unlock the full potential of this power. I don't know how or why, but it's tied to you, Alex. You're the key." Alex's head spun. A prophecy. Him. He wasn't some mystical hero. He was just a soldier, a man who barely understood the situation he was caught in. But Ziria's eyes, full of trust and urgency, held him in place. She was telling him the truth. He didn't know how he knew, but he felt it deep down. Whatever this was, whatever they were facing together, he couldn't turn back now. "We need to keep moving," Ziria said, pulling him from his thoughts. "We've bought ourselves some time, but we're not safe yet." Alex nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of everything she had revealed. But he didn't argue. He couldn't, not when the stakes were so high. Together, they continued down into the dark ravine, knowing that the danger was far from over. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead, the moment when he would have to choose what kind of man he would become. Would he rise to the challenge, or would he let everything fall apart? As the cold night air closed in around them, Alex knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The night air was thick with tension as Ziria and Alex stood side by side, staring at the wreckage of what was once the Dominion's most trusted ally. The power that Ziria had unleashed on Kairos had been nothing short of devastating, an explosion of raw energy that had forced him to retreat, his armor scorched and his confidence shattered. But the danger wasn't over. Kairos wasn't the only one hunting them. The Dominion forces were still on their tail, and now they knew just how far Ziria was willing to go to protect herself. And Alex's breath came in shallow gasps as he processed what had just happened. One moment, they were on the run, trying to escape the Dominion's grasp. The next, Ziria had unleashed a power that had knocked Kairos off his feet. The same power that had been hidden, locked away, now crackled with life in her every movement. But it wasn't just her strength that surprised him. It was the bond between them, something he still didn't fully understand. He felt it too, the strange connection, as if they were destined to be part of this fight together. Ziria turned to him, her expression serious, the glow of her skin dimming slightly as the adrenaline from her power began to fade. "Alex, you need to understand something," she said, her voice low but steady. "Kairos is just one part of a much larger plan. The Dominion is using him, and others like him, as pawns. He's only a fraction of what they're capable of." Alex nodded, his mind racing. He couldn't deny the truth in her words. He had seen firsthand the ruthlessness of the Dominion. They were a force unlike any he had encountered before, efficient, deadly, and willing to use anything or anyone to get what they wanted. "But you're something else," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't know what else to say, so he let his words hang in the air. Ziria didn't seem to take offense. Instead, she looked at him, her eyes softening, a small, almost imperceptible smile crossing her lips. "I'm not just a princess, Alex. I'm the last of my kind. My people. We once ruled with a power that no one understood. That's why they're hunting me. And you're part of that power now." Alex felt his heart skip a beat. "What do you mean? How am I part of it?" Ziria hesitated for a moment, her eyes glinting with something unreadable. "I don't fully understand it myself. But the prophecy says that a human will play a role in unlocking the full potential of my people's power. I don't know how or why, but somehow, it's you." Alex stood frozen, trying to process her words. A human. Him. He was just a soldier, a man who had been thrown into a conflict he barely understood. How could he possibly be part of something so monumental? Before he could voice his confusion, the sound of heavy footsteps broke through the stillness of the jungle. The Dominion was closing in again. They had to move. "We don't have time to figure this out right now," Ziria said urgently, pulling him forward. "But I'll explain more when we're safe. We need to keep moving." They broke into a run, Ziria leading the way through the thick foliage, her glowing skin lighting the path ahead. Alex followed closely, trying to keep up with her speed, despite the burning in his legs. But the sound of the Dominion ships grew louder, and soon The air around them was filled with the buzzing of search drones. Ziria's eyes flickered with determination, but Alex could see the strain in her expression. The energy she had used to fight Kairos had taken its toll. She was starting to tire. They needed a plan, and fast. "Ziria, we can't outrun them forever," Alex said, panting as they dodged past trees and bushes. "We need to find a way to fight back." "I know," Ziria replied, her voice strained, "but we don't have the luxury of time. The longer we stay here, the more likely they'll find us. We need to head for the caves. There's an old hideout my people used to use. We might be able to regroup and plan from there." Alex nodded, realizing that their only option was to keep pushing forward. They had to stay one step ahead of the Dominion. But as they made their way deeper into the jungle, a thought gnawed at the back of his mind. If he was truly part of this prophecy, part of whatever power Ziria's people had once controlled, then the stakes had just become far greater than he ever imagined. What did the Dominion want with that power? Why were they willing to go to such lengths to capture Ziria? He glanced over at her as they ran, his mind racing. Ziria had been running from this fight for so long. Was it time for them to finally face it together? As they neared the entrance to the cave, Ziria turned to him, her expression hardening with resolve. "We can't go back now. Whatever happens next, we face it head-on. The Dominion is after us both, and I won't let them win." Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't running anymore. The time for hiding was over. They were about to make their stand. The entrance to the cave loomed before them, an imposing maw in the side of the cliff, shrouded in darkness. Behind them, the Dominion's relentless pursuit grew louder, the hum of their ships and the whir of drones echoing through the jungle. Every step Alex took felt heavier, but Ziria's determination kept him moving forward. They had no choice but to enter the cave and prepare for whatever came next. Ziria paused just before entering the darkness, turning to face Alex. Her glowing skin, which had once pulsed with energy, was now dimmer, and the weariness was evident in her eyes. The power she had unleashed to stop Kairos had drained her more than she was willing to admit, but she refused to let it show. She needed to be strong, not just for herself, but for Alex too. He had come to mean something far more important to her than she had anticipated. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. "Alex, once we're inside, we have to set up a perimeter," Ziria instructed, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "The cave's not a perfect hideout, but it'll have to do. We need to rest, gather our strength, and prepare for what's coming." Alex nodded, glancing at the jungle behind them. The fear that had taken root in his chest wasn't just for his own survival anymore. It was for her too. Ziria had already been through so much, and now she was depending on him just as much as he was depending on her. They entered the cave, the air inside cool and damp. The faint glow from Ziria's skin provided enough light to make out the rough stone walls and jagged formations that lined the cave. It was a place of refuge for her people, but now it would serve as the site of their last stand. Inside, they quickly set to work. Ziria found a small, elevated ledge deep in the cave to rest, while Alex used whatever tools and resources they had to set up a defensive perimeter. Their time was running out. The Dominion's forces were closer now. The sound of their search drones reverberated through the cave's entrance. Alex's mind raced, wondering if they had enough time to prepare for what was coming. He glanced over at Ziria, who had already begun to tap into her power, her hands glowing, as she prepared herself for the inevitable battle. He could see the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders, but she didn't flinch. She was a warrior, proud, strong, and unwavering. "We'll make it through this," Alex said quietly, more to himself than to her. Ziria looked over at him, her expression softening for a moment. "I hope so," she replied, her voice filled with something Alex couldn't quite place. "But even if we don't, I'm glad you're with me. Before Alex could respond, the unmistakable sound of heavy boots echoed through the cave's entrance. The Dominion had arrived. Zuria's body tensed as the distant lights of their search party flickered against the mouth of the cave. Alex clenched his fists. He had been in countless battles before, but this one felt different. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for each other. He turned to Zuria. "We can do this. We'll fight them off." Zuria gave him a nod, her eyes fierce with resolve. "This isn't just about survival. It's about standing up for what's right. We fight for the future." The Dominion forces were closing in, and there was no turning back. Alex didn't have time to second-guess himself. The battle for Zuria's freedom, and for the fate of both their worlds, was about to begin. The first few Dominion soldiers appeared at the mouth of the cave, their faces masked, their weapons raised, but they weren't prepared for what Zuria could do. With a sudden movement, Zuria raised her hand, and a wave of energy surged from her, slamming into the nearest soldier with such force that he was thrown back into the stone walls of the cave. His scream echoed, but he didn't rise. Alex moved quickly, firing his weapon at the approaching soldiers, taking them down with precision. The fight had begun. The Dominion soldiers weren't prepared for Zuria's power, and they weren't ready for Alex's skills either. The battle raged on inside the cave, each moment filled with tension and fury. Zuria fought like a force of nature, her every movement a blur of power and grace. Alex, though outnumbered, held his ground, his every instinct sharpened by years of battle. Zuria's glow intensified with each passing moment, and as more soldiers fell, she turned to Alex, her expression fierce. "They're not going to stop until they have me," she said through gritted teeth. "We need to end this." Alex nodded. "Let's do it." Together, they advanced further into the cave, fighting side by side. They moved as one, each knowing what the other would do before it happened. Zuria's power and Alex's tactical brilliance made them an unstoppable duo. But just as they thought they had gained the upper hand, a new, even more menacing figure appeared. Kairos, fully recovered and flanked by more Dominion soldiers. His armor was repaired, and his eyes burned with hatred. "This ends now," Kairos sneered. "You should have stayed out of my way, Zuria." Zuria's gaze hardened. "It's you who should have stayed out of my way, Kairos. This fight doesn't belong to you anymore." With that, she charged, and Alex followed, their combined strength ready to take down whatever threat came their way. The final battle had begun. The storm was coming, and this time they weren't running. Together, Zuria and Alex would face the Dominion head-on. It was a fight for the galaxy, and for each other.